Have you ever tried to solve a quadratic equation by factorization and found that you are unable to find two numbers that when you multiply gives you a number, say x, and when you add those same two numbers you could not get a number, say y? Do you want to know an alternative method to solving such quadratic equations? Hi everyone, I'm Siad Malim from SOMA Academy, and today I'm going to share with you how to solve quadratic equation by completing the square method. Now, before we get started, I just want to ask you guys to subscribe to this channel. That way, when I release new content like this, you will get notified. Now, I have a question for you. How many of you have used completing square method before? If you have, leave a comment with yes. If you haven't, leave a comment with no. Because you know what? Whether you have used this method before or haven't, I am going to share with you the easiest way to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square method. Let's look at one example. X squared minus 12x minus 7 is equal to 0. The first step to solving a quadratic equation by completing the square method is to take the constant to the other side of the equation. So that is x squared minus 12x is equal to, so when you take it to the other side of the equation, the sign changes. If it is negative, it becomes positive, and if it is positive, it becomes negative. In this case, it will become positive, so that will be 7. The next step is to divide the coefficient of the x term into 2 and square it, then add that number to both sides of the equation. So add the coefficient of x term is negative 12 divided by 2, that is negative 12 divided by 2, and then you square that. Because you added to this side of the equation, you also have to add on the other side of the equation. Negative 12 divided by 2 squared. Okay, so this will give me x squared minus 12x plus, when you divide negative 12 divided by 2, that will give you negative 6. When you square that, you get 36. It is positive because this was positive and this is also positive. That is equal to 7 plus, on this side it will also be 36. Because negative 6 squared is 36. Next step is you write it as a perfect square. X, which is this term, minus always the sign of the x term. What you put in here, squared, is equal to the sum of these two is 43. But what number do I put? This number you put here is always the coefficient of x, the term x divided by 2. So in this case, negative 12 divided by 2 is 6. What you have here is negative x minus 6 squared equals to this. So the next step is you square root both sides of the equation. This will give you x minus 6 is equal to the square root of 43. You can use a calculator to simplify. So in order to find x, what you will do is x is equal to take this 6, negative 6 to the other side of the equation. The sign changes to positive. So when you also square root a whole number, remember you always have plus or minus. Okay, so I take this negative 6 to the other side, it becomes 6 plus or minus the square root of 43. This will always give you two solutions, where one is equal to x is equal to 6 plus square root of 43, or x equals to 6 minus square root of 43. So those will be the two solutions for this equation. So let me go back and repeat one more time. Whenever you are given this kind of equation and you are asked to solve by completing square method, the first step is you take the constant to the other side of the equation, which is what we did here. And remember, the sign always flips. So the next step is you divide the coefficient of the x term, which is negative 12 in this case, divide into 2 and then square it, then add that to both sides of the equation. So negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6, you square, that is 36. So what I did is negative 36, I added that to both sides of the equation, this side of the equation and the other side of the equation. Once you get that, you write the left side of the equation as perfect square. And how do you do? The easiest way is you take your x term, you subtract. This sign will always be what the sign you always have here. If this is negative, this will be negative. If it was positive, you will have here positive. So the easiest way to also find this number here is always whatever you have as the coefficient of the x term divided by 2 is always be what will go in here. And then you square that is equal to, the left side will be 43. So in order to find just x, you square root both sides of the equation. This will give me x minus 6 is equal to, whenever you square root a whole number, you always get plus or minus. So plus or minus the square root of 43. Okay, so next step is take the 6 to the other side of the equation. Remember of the sign, if it's negative it becomes positive, so that will be 6 plus or minus square root of 43. So in this quadratic equation, it will have two solutions. One will be 6 plus, that is when it is positive, when the square root of the term is positive, and then when it is negative, so then you subtract. Okay, let's do one more example. X squared plus 6x plus 1 is equal to 0. First step, take the constant to the other side of the equation. X squared plus 6x is equal to, because it is positive now, it becomes negative. Okay, the next step is you divide the coefficient of the x term into 2 and square it, then add that to both sides of the equation. X squared plus 6x plus, divide this into 2, that's 3, so it will be 3 squared is equal to negative 1 plus 3 squared, or you could just put 9 in there to make it easy. So the next step is to write this side of the equation as a perfect square, and we say it will be x from the x squared term plus, why is it plus? Because this is plus. Okay, so what goes in here, we say the x term, the coefficient of the x term divided by 2, that's 3 squared is equal to -1 plus 9. Okay, so x plus 3 squared is equal to 8. In order to find what x is, you square root both sides of the equation. This will give me x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 8. Okay, in order to solve for x is equal to, because it is positive, when you take it to the other side of the equation, it becomes negative. Okay, plus or minus root 8. There is a way to simplify root 8. Okay, so root 8 can be written as 4 times 2. But what is root 4? That is just 2. So it becomes 2 root 2. That is the simpler version of writing it this way. So x is equal to -3 plus or minus 2 root 2. So you will have two solutions where x is equal to -3 plus 2 root 2, and the other solution will be x is equal to -3 minus 2 root 2, and that will be one of the answers, and this will be the other solution of this equation.